In the golden age of television, when American living rooms were lit up by the soft glow of cathode ray tubes, some shows became more than just entertainment. They were staples, weekly rituals that brought families together, offering a comforting, orderly vision of life. Amid the chaos of the late 1960s, one show emerged as the television equivalent of a warm blanket: Family Affair. For 5 seasons, from 1966 to 1971, audiences were drawn into the life of Bill Davis, a wealthy bachelor whose world is turned upside down when his orphaned nieces and nephew move into his lavish Manhattan apartment. With his impeccably proper English butler, Mr. Giles French, by his side, Uncle Bill navigated the uncharted waters of parenthood with a mix of masculine authority and surprising tenderness. The show was an instant hit, a ratings juggernaut that defined an era of family-friendly programming. At the heart of its charm was the undeniable chemistry among the cast. The dynamic between the sophisticated Uncle Bill, the stoic yet soft-hearted Mr. French, and the 3 children, teenager Sissy, and the adorable 6-year-old twins, Jody and Buffy, was pure television magic. Particularly the bond between Uncle Bill, played by the ruggedly handsome Brian Keith, and little Jody, portrayed by the cherubic red-headed Johnny Whitaker, anchored the series. On screen, they were the perfect father-son duo, embodying patience, understanding, and unconditional love that resonated with millions of viewers. But what happens when the cameras stop rolling? What's the reality behind the carefully crafted illusion of a perfect family when the complexities of human dynamics come into play? For decades, whispers and rumors have swirled about the atmosphere on the set of Family Affair. Stories of a painful rift between the man who played America's favorite uncle and the young boy who played his beloved nephew have persisted. Was it just the usual friction of a workplace? Or did Johnny Whitaker genuinely come to resent the man who was his father figure in the eyes of the world? The truth, as it often is far more complex, nuanced, and ultimately heartbreaking than the headlines suggest. This is the story of what really happened behind the scenes of one of television's most cherished shows. On screen, they were America's favorite family, a successful engineer and his 3 adorable charges, navigating life in a sprawling new York City apartment with the help of a quintessential English gentleman. But for decades, whispers of a bitter off-screen reality have haunted their legacy. Was it simple friction? Or did young Johnny Whitaker truly grow to resent the man who played his beloved Uncle Bill? The truth is far more intricate and heartbreaking than you might think. A story not of simple hatred, but of a child's wounded heart and a man grappling with his own private demons. To grasp the complicated environment on the set of Family Affair, we first need to understand the man at its center, Brian Keith. Long before he became the affable Uncle Bill, Keith was shaped by hardship, discipline, and the stark realities of life, far removed from the glitz of Hollywood. He wasn't a product of the studio system's star-making machine. He was a survivor, a veteran, and a dedicated craftsman who viewed acting as a job to be done well, not just a path to fame. Born Robert Alba Keith in Bayonne, New Jersey, in 1921, show business was in his blood. His father, Robert Keith, was a respected character actor, and his mother, Helena Shipman, was a stage actress. He made his first film appearance at just 3 years old in a silent film called Pied Piper Malone. But his childhood was far from the glamorous fantasy one might imagine. His parents divorced, and he spent his formative years being raised by his mother and grandmother on Long Island, New York. This upbringing instilled in him a sense of independence and a certain world weariness from a young age. However, the single most defining experience of Brian Keith's life occurred far from any stage or film set. In 1941, before the attack on Pearl Harbor, he enlisted in the United States Marine Corps. When war broke out, he was sent to the Pacific Theater, serving as a radio operator and rear gunner in a Douglas SBD Dauntless dive bomber. This was no safe assignment. These two-man aircraft were crucial in some of the fiercest battles of the Pacific, flying into heavy anti-aircraft fire to deliver their payloads. Keith flew numerous missions, including dangerous raids over the heavily fortified Japanese base at Rabaul. He was a decorated serviceman, earning an Air Medal for his bravery under fire. One harrowing account from his service illustrates the kind of man he was. During an attack, his plane was heavily damaged and fell behind its squadron. Targeted by two Japanese Zero fighters, Keith found that both of his machine guns had jammed. Thinking quickly, he began firing his pistol with tracer rounds at the enemy planes. When that ammo ran out, he grabbed a flare gun and fired a red rocket at the attacking fighters, a desperate move that confused the enemy pilots long enough for an Allied plane to come to his aid. This was Brian Keith, cool under pressure, resourceful, and utterly unflappable. When he returned to civilian life in 1945, he brought the discipline and no-nonsense attitude of the Marine Corps with him. He began his career in earnest, working on the New York stage in acclaimed productions like Mr. Roberts before transitioning to the burgeoning world of television and film. Throughout the 1950s and early 1960s, he built a reputation as a reliable and versatile character actor. He was a man's man, often cast in westerns and gritty crime dramas, sharing the screen with legends like John Wayne and Joan Crawford. He was rugged, handsome, and exuded an aura of quiet strength. What he wasn't, by any stretch, was a lightweight television personality. He was a serious, classically trained actor who had little patience for the frivolous aspects of Hollywood. He disdained the cult of celebrity and the need for constant adulation. For Keith, acting was a craft. You showed up on time, knew your lines, hit your marks, and went home. There was no room for ego, no time for hand-holding, and certainly no patience for what he might have considered childish sensitivities. By the time Family Affair began, he had been through 2 divorces and was a father. He was a man who had seen the world, faced death, and built a career through sheer grit and professionalism. This was the man who, in 1966, was cast as the warm, paternal, and endlessly patient Uncle Bill, setting the stage for a profound culture clash with his young co-star. If Brian Keith embodied grizzled, old-school professionalism, Johnny Whitaker was his polar opposite. Born in 1959 in Van Nuys, California, he was the quintessential child actor of the era. Precocious, talented, and brimming with a natural charm. He kicked off his career at just 3 years old, appearing in television commercials before landing the role of young Scotty Baldwin on the soap opera General Hospital. By the time he was cast in Family Affair, he already had an impressive credit to his name, a role in the 1966 blockbuster comedy The Russians Are Coming, which also starred Season. During that intense month of filming, every single one of his scenes for the entire season, every master shot, every close-up, every interaction, was filmed. For the remaining months, the children, Anissa Jones and Johnny Whitaker, would have to film their side of the scenes. They weren't acting opposite Brian Keith. They were often acting opposite a script supervisor reading his lines, or, in some cases, a piece of tape on a stand to mark their eye line. Imagine being a child, tasked with conveying deep emotions of love, sadness, or joy while looking at an inanimate object and hearing your beloved Uncle Bill's lines read in a flat monotone by a crew member. While this method was incredibly efficient for the studio and for Keith, it created an emotionally sterile and challenging environment for a young actor. The warmth and connection that audiences saw on screen was a masterclass in child acting, a testament to Whitaker's ability to conjure real emotion in a completely artificial setting. But it came at a cost. The disconnect between the loving Uncle Bill on the page and the absent Brian Keith on the set left Whitaker feeling profoundly confused and isolated. This dynamic wasn't necessarily born of malice on Keith's part. It reflected who he was, a Marine, a no-nonsense professional from an older school of acting. He wasn't there to make friends. He was there to work. In his mind, he was likely treating Whitaker with professional respect. But a child can't comprehend that distinction. All Johnny Whitaker knew was that the man who was supposed to be his uncle, the man he looked up to, seemed cold, distant, and uninterested in him. That kind of emotional void leaves a mark on a child's heart. Over the years, this narrative of a difficult working relationship has sometimes been conflated with other rumors about Keith's behavior with child co-stars. Stories have long circulated about a supposed feud with another beloved child star, Hayley Mills, on the set of the 1961 Disney classic, The Parent Trap. Tabloid tales and online videos speak of Keith cruelly nicknaming Mills the Golden Goose as a jab at her Disney fame, or of an incident where he allegedly slammed a chair and stormed off the set, blaming her for a ruined take. However, a closer look at the historical record reveals these sensational claims to be largely, if not entirely, unsubstantiated. In fact, in her own interviews, Hayley Mills has spoken of Brian Keith in glowing terms, remembering him and her other co-star, Maureen O'Hara, as wonderful, wonderful character actors, and describing how they worked together so well. This stark contrast between the persistent rumors and Mills's own positive recollections serves as a crucial reminder of how easily Hollywood myths are born and how difficult they are to dispel. The real story of Brian Keith's relationship with Johnny Whitaker wasn't about overt cruelty, but about a more subtle and insidious form of emotional neglect that left a lasting impact. When Family Affair was canceled in 1971, the on-screen family that had captured America's heart went their separate ways. But the legacy of the show and the lives of those who made it would be forever intertwined. In the years that followed, a dark narrative began to form, one that spoke of a family affair curse. This sensationalized media trope was born from a series of profound and undeniable tragedies that befell the cast, cementing the show's place in Hollywood lore as a story of both on-screen joy and off-screen heartbreak. Perhaps the most tragic story is that of Anissa Jones, who played the adorable Buffy. After the show ended, Jones, then 13, found herself desperate to shed the wholesome, pigtailed image that had made her a star. She was typecast, unable to land roles that would allow her to transition into a more mature acting career. She auditioned for the role of Regan in The Exorcist, but was ultimately seen as too associated with the sweet character of Buffy. Her home life was also in turmoil, marked by her parents' bitter divorce. Feeling lost and struggling to find her identity outside of the show, Jones began to fall in with a dangerous crowd, experimenting with drugs and engaging in petty crime. On her 18th birthday, she came into a trust fund of around $180,000, the earnings from her years on the show. The money, instead of providing security, only served to accelerate her downward spiral. Just a few months later, on August 28, 1976, Anissa Jones was found dead at a party in Oceanside, California. She had died from a massive and accidental drug overdose. The coroner reported it was one of the most severe he had ever seen, a lethal combination of cocaine, PCP, Quaaludes, and Seconal. America's little girl was gone at just 18 years old, the first and most devastating chapter in the story of the show's curse. Sebastian Cabot, the man who brought the beloved Mr. French to life with such dignity and warmth, also faced health struggles after the show. Born in London, he had to leave school at 14 to support his family, working as a mechanic and even a chauffeur before bluffing his way into acting. He continued